What do you do when someone shatters something inside you but walks away like it meant nothing? No fight, no apology, just silence. And yet the echo of what they did keeps ringing in your mind long after they're gone. You start questioning yourself, not because you were wrong, but because their indifference made you doubt your worth. They didn't need to raise their voice to wound you, they just disappeared, dismissed, denied. And somehow you're still carrying the weight. But here's something the Stoics understood well. Sometimes the deepest pain isn't physical. It's the quiet ache of being unseen, unheard, unvalued. And the answer isn't in shouting back or demanding justice. It's in mastering the art of silence, the kind that doesn't suppress you but sets you free. This isn't about vengeance. It's about something far more powerful, learning to reclaim your dignity without a single word. Because strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it simply walks away. If any part of that touches something inside you, stay. This video isn't just advice, it's a mirror, a reminder, and maybe the first step back to yourself. Let's begin. Number 1, you owe yourself peace, not a battle. Have you ever sat alone after being hurt, staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m., imagining the perfect moment when they finally understand what they did to you? Not because you want revenge, but because you want the pain to make sense. You want closure, justice, something that feels fair. It's a quiet ache, the feeling of being wronged without remedy, of carrying a wound that the world doesn't see. And in that space, your mind becomes a courtroom, running trials that will never be heard. But here's where the Stoic path cuts through all the noise. You don't owe them a war. You owe yourself peace. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." That truth is sharp, isn't it? Because it doesn't promise satisfaction, it offers liberation. We think that if we say the right thing, get the last word, show them how deeply they've scarred us, maybe, just maybe, they'll finally feel what we felt. But that's not justice, that's emotional debt collection, and often the only thing you collect is more suffering. Let me tell you a story. A man I once knew had his closest friend betray him, lied to his face, stole from him, and disappeared. For months, he crafted letters in his head, what he'd say if they crossed paths again. But they never did. And one day, he realized the betrayal was no longer the source of his suffering. His attachment to what should have happened was the truth. He was reopening a wound every morning just to remind himself it hadn't healed. The betrayal wasn't repeating. He was. As Epictetus said, it is not things that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. You were betrayed. That's real. But carrying that betrayal into every conversation, letting it cloud your judgment, poison your sleep, interrupt your moments of peace, that's not their doing anymore. That's yours. This is where the Stoic journey begins, not with controlling others, but with mastering your own judgment. Because you cannot make them apologize, you cannot rewind the betrayal, you cannot force anyone to see your worth. But you can decide that their actions no longer have emotional authority over your life. And that, my friend, is peace, not a fake smile, not forced forgiveness, but a powerful decision that says, I choose what enters my mind, and your chaos is no longer welcome. Peace is walking away from the emotional battlefield, not because you lost, but because the war itself is beneath you. You don't need to win a screaming match. You don't need them to understand. Some people don't deserve your anger. They deserve your absence. This isn't about weakness. It's the highest form of strength, emotional discipline. It's the moment you stop handing them the remote control to your inner world. Let them wonder why you went silent. Let them question why their tactics don't reach you anymore. That's not avoidance. That's power refined. Because not every pain deserves a reaction, and not every wound needs to become a scar. Some are meant to be reminders, not of who hurt you, but of who you chose to become afterward. And that choice, right now, is yours. So let's move forward. Because the next step is not about them at all. It's about you becoming untouchable in the best way possible. Number 2, guard your energy like a sacred flame. Have you ever tried to shout into a void, hoping that maybe, just maybe, it would echo back something human? That's what it feels like to argue with someone who doesn't care. You replay the conversations, the silence, the manipulation, thinking if you just phrase it right, they'll finally understand. But the truth is, they won't. Not because they're confused or oblivious, but because they never saw it like you did. What you call betrayal, they call strategy. What you call love, they may have called convenience. And what you call silence, that was never forgetfulness. That was calculated. You don't win by exposing a person like that. You don't win by trying to wake someone who chooses to be asleep to their own cruelty. You win by evolving, by growing so far past their emotional reach that they wouldn't even recognize the version of you they once tried to break. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it, and nothing wastes your life more than spending it trying to get closure from someone who benefits from your confusion." Imagine waking up every day with a full tank, 100 units of energy. Now, count how many you spend replaying what they said, thinking of what you should have said, wondering if they miss you, regretting what you gave. 10 units here, 15 there. By lunchtime, 80% of your energy is spent keeping the fire of a dead relationship alive. And for what? So they live rent-free in your head while you delay your own peace. There was a woman I knew, strong, sharp, kind. She was left on red by someone she loved deeply. No reason, no fight, just gone. For weeks, she waited, wrote long messages she never sent, crafted speeches in the mirror. Until one day she deleted everything, not out of anger, but because she finally realized her silence wasn't weak, it was sacred. It was the only part of her life still untouched by him, and she chose to guard it. This isn't cowardice, it's clarity, it's emotional intelligence in its rawest form. You don't preserve your energy because they deserve grace. You preserve it because you do, because your energy is your life, and you have things to build, dreams, peace, presence, a version of yourself that no longer bleeds for people who never brought a bandage. And yes, they'll call you cold. They'll say you've changed. They'll accuse you of giving up. Let them. Their confusion is not your concern. You're not healing to send a message. You're healing because silence is a message, and you're finally sending it to yourself. The greatest revenge. It's not public. It's not poetic. It's not something they'll understand. It's the day you stop checking your phone. The day you walk into your peace and forget their name on the way there. That's when you know you've won. Not because they lost, but because they no longer matter. Now, if that peace sounds unfamiliar, then stay with me, because the next part isn't about them either. It's about what happens when you stop waiting for closure and start choosing your own clarity. Number 3, pain is real, but meaning is yours to choose. What if I told you the pain you're feeling right now isn't the thing breaking you? It's the story you keep telling yourself about that pain. They ghosted you, they lied, they walked away like your loyalty was disposable. That part is real. But what happens next, what that pain means, that's where your power lives. See, most people never learn this until it's too late. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. You can't outrun heartbreak. You can't meditate betrayal into nothingness. And no amount of positive vibes only will erase what they did. Even the greatest Stoics didn't live untouched. Marcus Aurelius buried 8 of his children. Epictetus lived as a slave with a broken body. Seneca was exiled, betrayed, and forced to die by his own hand. But their greatness wasn't in their pain, it was in what they did with it. People mistake stoicism for numbness, but emotional intelligence, real stoic strength, isn't about ignoring pain. It's about facing it head-on, without letting it define you. Pain knocks. That's natural. It's your mind's alarm system saying, something's wrong. But suffering, that's the echo you keep feeding long after the wound should have started healing. There's a man I once met, sharp, driven, kind, but after being left by someone he gave everything to, he lost himself. Not in a dramatic collapse, but in quiet spirals. He replayed the breakup every night, wondered what he could have done differently, built stories about how unlovable he must be, until one day he stopped. Not because he stopped hurting, but because he got tired of suffering. He asked himself, what if this pain isn't here to punish me, but to prepare me? That's the Stoic shift. It's not why did this happen to me? It's what do I do with it now? As Epictetus said, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond. The question isn't whether they hurt you. They did. The question is whether you'll bleed endlessly or let this wound teach you where your boundaries need reinforcement. Every betrayal is resistance training for your soul. Every silence they gave you is an invitation to stop chasing validation. Every disappointment is a mirror asking you, what did you overlook? What red flags did you justify? Where did you abandon yourself to keep someone else close? You build resilience by refusing to waste the wound, by choosing reflection over rumination, by reminding yourself, I don't need closure from them, I need clarity within me. So next time the pain returns, pause. Don't let your ego grab the pen. Don't let old narratives rewrite your worth. As Viktor Frankl once said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose. That's where the Stoic lives, not in the pain, but in that sacred pause. And in that pause, you decide, will this be your breakdown or your breakthrough? If you're ready to choose the latter, the next step will demand something deeper than reflection. It will require release. Let's step into that. Number 4, create meaning, don't chase closure. Have you ever sat in silence, replaying every word they never said, searching for the apology that never came? You wonder why it ended the way it did, why they hurt you, why they didn't care enough to explain. You're not alone. Most people get trapped in this emotional limbo, waiting for closure, as if someone else holds the key to their peace. But the truth is harsh and liberating. Closure isn't given, it's created, and if you're still waiting for them to make it right, they still own part of your mind. What you need isn't their explanation, it's your clarity. What did this pain reveal about the parts of you that were too trusting, too forgiving, too eager to see the best in people who weren't ready to meet you there? What cracks in your boundaries did this experience expose? What old wound in your self-worth did it awaken? The ancient Stoics believed that meaning is not found, it's forged. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Your betrayal doesn't have to mean you were unworthy. Your abandonment doesn't have to mean you were unlovable. Your rejection doesn't have to mean you were disposable. It can mean you've outgrown the space where you were once confined. It can mean your standards are rising. It can mean your soul was suffocating and finally demanded more. That's the beauty of spiritual discipline. It's not about suppressing pain. It's about choosing what the pain will mean. Will it define you or refine you? Here's a practice that comes straight from Stoic journaling. First, write down what happened. All of it. No filters, no edits. Then, write the meaning you've been carrying, the silent story you've repeated, and finally, rewrite it. Create a new meaning rooted in truth, growth, and power. They left me when I needed them most. I must not be enough. Now, I see it differently. They left because they couldn't carry what I carry. Their absence made space for something stronger in me. They humiliated me. I feel small and exposed. No, their cruelty revealed their character. My calm revealed mine. They betrayed me. I'll never trust again. Now, I understand. Their betrayal was not the end of trust. It was the beginning of discernment. It taught me to trust wiser, not less. Every time you rewrite the story, you reclaim your power. You stop being the wounded and become the author. And here's the truth. No one who didn't value you should ever get to edit the story of your worth. You are not here to be understood by those who never tried to understand you. You are here to understand yourself, to write something real, something sacred, something that reflects your strength, not your scars. So if this part of the message resonates, type clarity in the comments and subscribe to keep walking this path with us. Because the next step is even more powerful, protecting your peace through the one thing most people fear, boundaries. Let's go there. Number 5, set boundaries, not fires. Have you ever been hurt so deeply that your first instinct was to strike back, not physically but emotionally? That sharp voice in your mind says, they can't just get away with it. They need to feel what I felt. It's a cry for justice. But the Stoics would ask, what kind of justice are you really seeking? Because if your peace depends on their pain, then you're still chained to them. Revenge might feel like power in the moment, but it doesn't free you. It binds you to the same chaos you're trying to escape. It keeps your soul tangled in a war you were never meant to keep fighting. And the truth is, you don't have to burn their life down to find relief. You simply need to do one thing. Set a boundary so solid, so sacred, they no longer have access to your peace. That's how a warrior walks in silence, not to hurt, but to rise. In Stoic thought, justice isn't about punishment. It's about inner order. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. What stains your peace isn't what they did, it's how long you allow it to stay unfiltered in your mind." When someone disrespects you, the highest form of response isn't to react. It's to regulate. Not to scream, but to say within yourself, I see you clearly now, and I no longer allow you to distort who I am. I remember someone once said to me after setting a hard boundary, she called me cold. I said, no. You've just stopped being available for chaos. That's not cold, that's calm. And calm is rare. Boundaries are not emotional walls. They're gates, wise, intentional filters. A wall keeps everything out. A gate decides who enters, when, and under what conditions. That's the difference between fear and clarity. And clarity is powerful. Because once you set a boundary, you begin to see who was really there for you, and who was only there for what they could take. A man once told me, I finally told her, I'm not available for this anymore. And suddenly, she vanished. That wasn't a loss. That was a reveal. Still, for kind souls, the hardest part is guilt. Guilt for saying no. Guilt for pulling away. But hear me, it's not selfish to protect your space. It's sacred. If someone makes you feel guilty for needing peace, they were counting on you never claiming it. So, start small. Don't over-explain. Don't respond out of obligation. And when you finally say, that's not okay with me, I won't continue like this. Watch what happens. That reaction, that's who they really are. A boundary reveals truth faster than any conversation, and when you stop responding to the bait, the game ends. You stop feeding their power. You stop sacrificing your energy to maintain false peace. You don't owe them your emotional availability. You owe yourself your evolution. Detachment isn't cold, it's healing. It's the quiet decision to stop participating in cycles that no longer serve you. As Epictetus taught, no man is free who is not master of himself. And this is how you become free. By walking away, not in rage, not in drama, but in dignity. If you feel that, type peace in the comments to claim it, and subscribe if you're ready to protect your energy like a gate, not a wall. Because next, we're going deeper, not just in what you walk away from, but in what you walk into. Number 6. Your calm is your greatest power. What if the greatest power you'll ever hold has nothing to do with control and everything to do with what you no longer react to? People think power means dominating a room, winning an argument, controlling how others see you. But the Stoics understood something far more profound. True power is not found in controlling others. It's found in not being controlled by them. When someone disrespects you, dismisses you, or tries to pull you into their chaos, the real test isn't what they do. It's how you respond. That's where your power either leaks or locks in. Will you let your anger dictate the next word? Will you let their actions control your mind? Or will you step back, breathe, and choose stillness over noise? Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." There was a woman I met who had been deeply betrayed, lied to, manipulated, and discarded without explanation. She told me I wanted to scream to show him what he'd lost, but she didn't. Instead, she packed her things, blocked the chaos, and never looked back. Not to punish, not to win, but because she finally understood her peace wasn't up for negotiation anymore. This is what the Stoics trained for. They didn't pray for comfort. They prepared for chaos. They anticipated insult, hardship, betrayal, so that when it came, they weren't reactive. They were ready. Because peace isn't passivity. It's presence. It's the ability to stay grounded while the storm howls. And when toxic people realize they can't trigger you anymore, that their drama no longer disturbs your clarity, they lose control. That's why your silence scares them more than your voice ever could. The warrior within doesn't scream for revenge. It watches, it waits, it holds the line, not from weakness, but from wisdom. Because every time you react to dysfunction, you make a deposit into someone else's chaos. Every angry reply, every emotional spiral is time and energy you'll never get back, and your energy is sacred. Guard it like the gates of your soul. Think about it. Would you let someone walk into your home and destroy it? Of course not. Then why let them do it to your inner world? Seneca said, "It's not that life is short, it's that we waste much of it. And nothing wastes more of it than chasing closure from someone who was never worthy of your presence." So don't be afraid to detach. Don't be afraid to say nothing. When they expect outrage, give them silence. When they expect drama, give them distance. When they expect weakness, give them peace. Let your stillness confuse their chaos. Let your calm be the quiet storm they never saw coming. Because in the end, you don't prove your worth through war. You prove it through peace. A peace you've earned. A peace you now protect. And that, unbothered, unwavering, undisturbed, is the kind of power no one can take from you. Let's keep going, because the final part of this journey is the most powerful of all, becoming someone they can never reach again. Number 7. Forgive without return, release without hate. What if the greatest act of strength isn't who you fight, but who you finally release? There's a lie many of us have been taught, that forgiveness means reunion, that if you've truly let go, you'll welcome them back. But that belief keeps people in chains, because the truth is simple. Forgiveness is not a reunion, it's a release of anger, of resentment, of the poison they left inside you. And that release, it's not for them, it's for you. The Stoics never taught us to suppress emotion, but to master it. They didn't ask us to forget the betrayal, but to detach from the suffering. Forgiveness, in its highest form, is not a performance. You don't owe them an announcement. You don't need their understanding. You don't even need their apology. Forgiveness is when you look at the wound and say, "This happened, I accept it, but it no longer gets to live in me." Seneca once said, "To be everywhere is to be nowhere." And when you're mentally tethered to someone who hurt you, constantly thinking about what they did, what they said, how it ended, you're everywhere but here. You're in their story instead of your own, and that story has to end. Forgiveness is not letting them off the hook. It's unhooking yourself from their chaos. It's saying, "I no longer carry your shadow into my light." There was a man I once spoke to who'd been ghosted by a friend of 10 years, no warning, no explanation. Months passed. Anger festered. One day he wrote a letter, not to send, but to release. At the end he wrote, "I forgive you, not because you earned it, but because I need my energy back." That moment changed him. Not because the other person returned, they never did, but because he walked away lighter. You can forgive someone and still never speak to them again. You can wish them peace and still block their number. You can let go of the bitterness and still guard your door. Because forgiveness without boundaries is emotional naivety, and boundaries without forgiveness become emotional baggage. The warrior knows how to use both, not to attack, but to defend the sanctity of peace. People often mistake forgiveness as weakness, but it takes far more strength to unclench your fists than to throw them. The real test isn't in how loudly you condemn them, it's in how silently you rise without them. And let's be clear, trust is not automatic. It is not owed, it is earned. Forgiving someone doesn't mean you owe them re-entry. It means you've evolved beyond needing revenge. You don't need to replay the pain. You don't need to teach them a lesson. Sometimes the most powerful statement is silence. Sometimes the real closure is knowing you could engage, but choosing peace instead. Forgiveness is not forgetting. It's remembering without rage. It's moving forward without dragging their shadow behind you. It's saying, "I let this go and I walk on, not because I'm weak, but because I'm wise, and now you're free." Not because they changed, but because you did. The pain doesn't control your voice anymore. The past no longer writes your identity. You've stepped into a new chapter, one they don't get to edit. And that's what we turn to next. The kind of detachment that doesn't cut you off from feeling, but connects you to something far greater, your wholeness. Number 8. Detachment is inner sovereignty. Have you ever walked away from someone physically but felt like they still lived inside your mind? Their voice echoes in your silence. Their choices disturb your peace. You don't see them, yet they linger like shadows on the walls of your inner world. That's not freedom. That's captivity disguised as moving on. And it's why Stoic detachment isn't about apathy. It's about reclaiming your sovereignty. Detachment is not pretending you don't care. It's not bottling up pain or faking indifference. True detachment, the kind the Stoics practiced, is spiritual discipline. It's the strength to step back with clarity, to remove yourself from chaos without losing your compassion, to stop showing up for people who never showed up for you, and to do it without guilt. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. Detachment is the application of that truth. You no longer fight for peace, you become it. There's a story I once heard of a woman who had been silently betrayed by someone she trusted for years. No confrontation, no dramatic ending, just a quiet unraveling. One day, she stopped texting. She stopped explaining. She stopped hoping they would see the damage. And in that silence, she found herself again. No speeches, no revenge, just stillness. That stillness was her strength. That choice was her liberation. Not because they apologized, because she no longer needed one. A manipulator wants noise. A coward wants a reaction. Someone who thrives in drama depends on your response to validate their worth. But when you detach with dignity, when your silence becomes your final word, you rob them of what they crave most, your energy. You don't need to slam the door. You don't need to explain the boundary, because true boundaries are not theatrical, they are internal. They sound like, "I see you clearly now, and that is enough." Detachment is the quiet realization that you don't need closure from someone who refused to give you honesty. It's the strength to walk away without waiting for them to chase. It's the maturity to stop performing strength and start living it. If you're walking away just to be noticed, you haven't really detached. You're still acting for an audience that never truly valued you. But when you walk in silence, not because you're avoiding, but because you've outgrown the performance, that is the moment you win. The Stoics taught that silence is not weakness. It's a weapon. Not one used to harm, but to cut away all that no longer serves your higher self. It is not the absence of feeling. It's the mastery of it. You no longer need to speak to be heard. Your actions echo where your words no longer belong. A true warrior doesn't need noise to prove strength. They move in silence and let their discipline speak. That's the difference between revenge and evolution. Revenge needs an audience. Evolution requires none. You don't need them to watch you grow. You grow because staying small would be a betrayal of your nature, and as you rise, something incredible happens. They disappear, not because they left, but because you stopped reaching back. Detachment is not a rejection of emotion. It's the honoring of it. It's choosing not to throw your pearls before those who only trample them. It's walking away, not in rage, but with reverence, for your own peace, for your own becoming. Let them think what they will. Let them rewrite the story if they must. But you, write a new chapter, one where their name never appears, one where your silence becomes the loudest proof that you've stepped into a life they can no longer enter. Because detachment, in its truest form, is not a reaction. It's a rebirth. And from here, you begin again, wiser, calmer, and finally beyond their reach. Let's move forward. Because now it's time to stop waiting for understanding and start living with clarity. Number 9, the moment you stop needing to be seen. Have you ever poured your energy into trying to be understood by someone who never really listened? You craft the perfect words, wait for them to see your value, replay the conversations in your head, hoping that somehow they'll get it. But the more you try to be seen by them, the less you see yourself. That's the quiet trap. You can't build your future while begging the past for permission. The Stoics taught us not to seek approval, but alignment. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke." When you stop trying to prove your worth to those who overlooked it and instead focus on living it, you change the entire game. That's not ego, that's purpose. You rise not to impress, but because staying small no longer reflects the person you've become. I once met a man who spent months trying to get an old friend to acknowledge how deeply they'd hurt him. Letters, long messages, silence in return. One day, he deleted every draft and walked away, not out of anger, but because he realized if they can't hear your silence, they were never listening to your words. That moment of stillness, of unbothered detachment, that was the win. Victory isn't when they realize what they lost. It's when they no longer have access to your peace. Not through argument, not through apology, simply by your absence. You didn't slam the door, you became someone they could no longer reach. That's the path of the warrior, not to win battles in front of others, but to end the war within. You don't need to announce your healing. You don't need to clap back. Your peace is the proof. Your composure is the closing chapter. And when your life begins to radiate stillness, clarity, and unwavering direction, no insult, no rumor, no false version of you can survive in that light. So stop rehearsing your defense. Stop explaining your growth. Just move and stay moved. Because when you detach from needing to be seen, that's when you finally see yourself. And that's the kind of strength no one can take. Now, let's carry that power forward into the final silence they'll never escape. Number 10. Silence is the final word. What if the most powerful thing you'll ever say is nothing at all? Let them talk. Let them guess. Let them rewrite the story to soothe their conscience. You don't owe them a reaction, because silence, when born of clarity, is not surrender, it's ascension. Peace isn't walking away defeated. It's walking away undefeated, with your dignity intact. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, the best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury. That is what Stoicism offers, not retaliation, but transcendence. When you understand your worth, you stop explaining it. You don't beg for closure. You become it. You don't chase calm. You carry it. And that's when they feel the shift, not through your words, but through your absence. There was once a woman who had been lied to, dismissed, and replaced without apology. She never shouted. She never pleaded. She simply became so still, so focused on building a new life that those who once hurt her became irrelevant. That's not bitterness. That's rebirth. Your stillness shakes the ground more than rage ever could. Your restraint, your detachment, your silence, these are not the signs of someone who gave up. These are the marks of a warrior who chose inner order over external noise. You are no longer trying to be understood by those committed to misunderstanding you. You are no longer performing strength. You are living it. You don't need them to clap. You don't need them to change. You don't even need them to remember, because the version of you that tolerated their presence no longer exists. What stands now is unbothered, unavailable, and unmistakably free. And that, without fury, without force, is the final form of power. Not just healing, not just growth, but transformation, the kind they never saw coming. If this message met you in silence and gave you strength, subscribe and walk this path with us. Comment "Quiet Power" to claim it. You're rising now, and the next step is waiting.